I found my wife's confession in the back of her closet, hidden behind the winter coats she said she'd donated to Goodwill 3 years ago. I was looking for my old college sweatshirt. I found the end of my marriage instead. It was a Saturday morning in mid-March, one of those crisp spring days where the sun tricks you into thinking winter's finally over. Tori had taken Grace to a birthday party across town. Some kid from her third-grade class whose parents apparently thought a bouncy castle and a petting zoo was appropriate for an 8-year-old's party. I'd begged off, claiming I needed to catch up on some project reports. The truth was simpler. I wanted 3 hours of silence. Our walk-in closet was a disaster. Tori's side looked like a department store had exploded. Shoes she'd worn once, dresses with tags still attached, enough handbags to open a boutique. My side was military neat. 14 years in engineering will do that to you. 4 years before that in the Army Corps of Engineers drilled it in deeper. I was hunting for my old flannel shirt, the red and black one I'd had since college. Comfortable as sin and perfect for yard work. I'd last seen it months ago, and I had a suspicion Tori had reorganized it into oblivion. I pushed past her collection of coats, the ones she'd supposedly donated, and my hand hit something solid. A shoebox shoved into the corner where the overhead light didn't reach. It wasn't shoes. Inside, I found a leather-bound journal with a brass clasp, a cheap prepaid phone, the kind drug dealers use in movies, and a manila envelope thick with photographs. My first thought, I swear to God, was that Tori was planning a surprise party for my upcoming birthday. Some kind of scrapbook project. That's how much I trusted her. That's how stupid I was. I opened the journal. The handwriting was Tori's. I'd know that looping script anywhere, but the voice wasn't. She'd titled the first page, Vera's Truth. Not Victoria. Not Tori. Vera, March 3rd. Derek says I'm finally becoming my authentic self. He sees the real me, not the suburban mother, not the dutiful wife. Vera, I've been asleep for 10 years and he's finally woken me up. April 17th. Anniversary weekend was perfect. Tyler thinks I was at the conference in Phoenix. I was in Derek's arms at the cabin. We made love 3 times and talked about our future. 2 more years, maybe 3. Once Grace is older and less dependent, then Vera gets her real life. June 8th. I've started moving money. Small amounts. Tyler's too trusting to notice. $200 here, $150 there. It adds up. My freedom fund. I sat on the closet floor and read 14 months of my wife's secret life. She described feeling trapped in her suburban prison. She wrote about her awakening with a man named Derek, her creative director at work, I'd later learn. She detailed their hotel rooms, their weekend escapes disguised as work trips, their plans for a future that didn't include me except as a source of alimony. The photographs were Polaroids, old school, untraceable, no metadata, no cloud backup. Smart. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Some kind of survival instinct had kicked in. The same cold calm that used to settle over me during complex operations in the Corps. When everything goes sideways, you don't panic. You assess, you document, you plan. Tori and a dark-haired man at a cabin I didn't recognize. She was wearing that silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. The green one she said was too nice for every day. Apparently it wasn't too nice for him. Tori and the same man at a restaurant with candles and wine. I recognized the table setting. That Italian place in the city she'd raved about after her girls' dinner last summer. She'd described the calamari in detail. She didn't mention her dining companion, Tori looking at him with an expression I thought she'd reserved for me, back when we were young and the world was just beginning. Her head was tilted, her smile soft and private. It was the look she used to give me when I'd say something that made her laugh. Before the mortgage, before the promotions, before we became roommates who occasionally remembered we used to be lovers. One photo had a date written on the back in her handwriting. November 15th. Our 12th anniversary. The weekend she'd told me she had an emergency client presentation in Seattle. I remembered that weekend. Grace had been disappointed that Mommy couldn't be there for our annual pizza and movie night. I'd promised her we'd do something special when Mommy got back. We'd made a card with glitter and stickers. "We miss you," it said. "Come home soon." Tori had cried when she saw it. "You two are my whole world," she'd said, hugging us both. "I don't know what I'd do without you." She'd been in Derek's arms 12 hours earlier. The photo proved it. I don't know how long I sat there. Time had stopped meaning anything. I remember my hands shaking as I photographed every page of that journal with my phone. Every text on the burner phone. Every photograph in the envelope. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I counted the coats, memorized their positions, made sure the shoebox was angled precisely the way it had been. I walked to our living room and sat in the dark. When Tori came home 2 hours later with Grace bouncing off the walls from sugar and excitement, I smiled. I asked about the party. I laughed at Grace's description of a goat eating someone's shoelaces. I kissed my wife on the cheek and told her I'd missed her. The man who walked into that closet was dead. Someone else was sitting there now. That night, Tori mentioned she was exhausted from work stuff and went to bed early. I waited until her breathing slowed into the rhythm of sleep, then went to my home office and closed the door. I'd spent 8 years in the Army before going private sector. 4 of those years were in intelligence-adjacent work, logistics analysis, infrastructure assessment, the kind of thing that teaches you how to see patterns and plan 3 moves ahead. The rest of my career had been in defense contracting, where precision meant the difference between systems that worked and systems that got people killed. For the first time in my civilian life, I was going to use every skill I'd ever learned. I searched for private investigators until 11:47 p.m. Most of them looked like ambulance chasers, garish websites, promises of catching cheaters in bold red letters. Then I found Ethan Moore's firm. Clean website. No promises, just credentials. 24 years in the field, 16 of them FBI. I sent an inquiry. He responded in 30 minutes. "Mr. Bennett, I work odd hours because the people I investigate keep odd hours. I can do a video call at 6 a.m. tomorrow if you're available. Based on your message, time is a factor. E. Moore." I slept on the couch, telling Tori I was coming down with something and didn't want her to catch it. She kissed my forehead and said I was so considerate. I managed not to vomit. At 5:45 a.m., I was sitting in my car in the garage with my laptop propped on the steering wheel. The engine was off, but I'd started the car briefly to warm it up, then killed it to save gas. Old habits. When you grow up counting pennies, you never quite stop. Ethan Moore appeared on screen at exactly 6. A weathered face, gray hair cropped short, eyes that looked like they'd seen every variety of human weakness. There was a coffee mug in his hand and what looked like a home office behind him, walls lined with filing cabinets. "Mr. Bennett, tell me what you found." I walked him through it. The journal, the phone, the photos. I held up screenshots, watching his face for any reaction. There was none. "Take your time," he said at one point, when I stumbled over the anniversary weekend detail. "I've been doing this a long time. Nothing you tell me is going to shock me, and nothing you're feeling right now is wrong." That simple acknowledgement nearly broke me. I clenched my jaw and kept going. The journal persona, this Vera identity, that's not garden variety cheating, he said when I'd finished. In 24 years, I've seen this pattern maybe a dozen times. The compartmentalization, the alternate name, the detailed planning. This isn't a mistake, Mr. Bennett. This is a lifestyle. Your wife has built a second self, and she's been feeding it for over a year. What do I need from you? Documentation, surveillance, financial records. The journal's damning, but it's her word. A good lawyer could claim it's fiction, creative writing, a therapeutic exercise. You need corroboration, photographs with timestamps, credit card receipts, hotel records, the affair partner's identity confirmed beyond doubt. And you can get all that? He leaned back in his chair. I spent 16 years with the Bureau, Mr. Bennett. 8 of those in counterintelligence. I can tell you what your wife had for breakfast last Tuesday if you need me to. The question is how far you want to go. All the way. Then I need you to understand something first. Once we start this, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. You can't unknow what I'm going to show you. You can't unsee it. Some men hire me and then decide they'd rather have the illusion. There's no shame in that. I thought about Grace, about the life I'd built, about the woman sleeping upstairs who I'd promised to love and cherish until death. The illusion is already gone, I said. I just need the evidence to prove it. 3,500 retainer. I'll have a preliminary report by tomorrow evening. Full surveillance package will take 2 to 3 weeks. Do it. After the call, I went back inside. The house was still quiet. Grace wasn't up yet, and Tori liked to sleep in on Sundays. I stood in the kitchen making coffee I didn't want, listening to the sounds of a home that had become a lie. When did it start? I wondered. Not the affair. I knew when that started. She'd written it all down. But when did she stop loving me? When did I become the suburban prison she needed to escape? Was it after Grace was born and she had to cut back her hours? Was it when I got promoted and started working late? Was it ever real in the first place? The questions spiraled until I heard footsteps on the stairs. I put on my mask and turned to greet my family. Tori was making pancakes for Grace, singing along to some pop song on the radio. She looked beautiful in the morning light. Dark hair pulled back, that smile that had stopped my heart 16 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. Feeling better, babe? She asked. Getting there. I was thinking I'd catch up on emails this afternoon. Maybe you could take Grace to the park? Sure, that sounds nice. She wrapped her arms around me from behind and pressed her cheek against my back. I love our little family, she murmured. I'm so lucky. I said the words back. They tasted like ashes. At the park, I pushed Grace on the swings and watched her laugh with pure joy. She had my eyes and her mother's smile. She was the only innocent person in this whole disaster, and I made myself a promise right there. Whatever happened next, I would protect her from the fallout. She would not become collateral damage in the war her mother had started. My phone buzzed. A text from Tori. Miss you. Dinner tonight? I typed back, can't wait. I was learning to lie. I hated how easy it was becoming. Ethan's first report arrived Monday evening. Derek Lawson, he said, his face filling my laptop screen. 41 years old, creative director at Palmer Wright Marketing, same firm where your wife works. I pulled his LinkedIn, his company bio, his social media. He's married to Megan Lawson, née Thornton, 2 kids, ages 6 and 10. He shared his screen. A photograph appeared. The same dark-haired man from the Polaroids, now in a professional headshot with a practiced smile. Here's where it gets interesting. I cross-referenced your wife's travel records, the ones you could access through your joint credit card, with Derek's corporate calendar. His assistant is, let's say, not great at digital security. In the past 14 months, your wife attended 8 conferences. Derek had client meetings in the same cities on the same dates, every single time. What about the weekend trips, the cabin? Working on that, should have more by Wednesday. Tuesday and Wednesday, I conducted my own investigation, the financial kind. I'd called my buddy Nathan Monday night. We'd been friends since freshman orientation at State, and he'd gone on to become one of the better family attorneys in the city. He didn't ask why I wanted to know how to audit my own finances without raising red flags. He just told me. What I found made me sick. Tori had opened a secret credit card 18 months ago, 3 months before the affair started. Or maybe she'd been planning it that long. The balance, $23,000. I pulled up the statements one by one, each line item a little knife twisting in my gut. Hotels. The Riverside Inn, 287. The Harbor View, 342. The Mountain Lodge in Cedar Falls, 489. Places I'd never been. Places we'd never gone together, each one a memory she'd made with someone else. Restaurants. That Italian place, again and again. A sushi restaurant downtown I'd suggested once and she'd said was too far to drive. A steakhouse in the city that charged $75 for a cut of beef. A jewelry store downtown. 3 separate purchases. $800, one $200, $650. I didn't recognize any new jewelry. Either she was hiding it or she'd given it to him. And then there were the cash withdrawals. I pulled up our joint account statements going back 2 years and started a spreadsheet. Because that's what engineers do when the world falls apart. We make spreadsheets. $50 from the ATM near her office. $200 from the one by the grocery store. $150, $75, $180. Never enough to trigger any alerts, never a round number that might stand out. Just a slow, steady hemorrhage that I'd never thought to notice because I trusted her. Because I was an idiot. The spreadsheet grew. 18 months of theft. One modest withdrawal at a time. The total made me push back from my desk and stare at the wall for a solid 5 minutes. $41,347. That's how much my marriage was worth to her. That's what she'd spent on her awakening while I worked 60-hour weeks and missed my daughter's school plays and turned down the corner office because it would require too much travel and Tori needed me home. I thought about the budget conversations we'd had, the vacation we couldn't afford, the repairs on the house we'd put off, the $529 contributions for Grace's college fund that we'd had to reduce because things were tight. Things weren't tight. My wife was stealing from us. Nathan had warned me that the financial stuff would hurt the most. The affair is emotional, he'd said. The money makes it real. It makes it calculated. He was right. Reading those journal entries about Vera and her awakening had felt surreal, like reading bad fiction. But looking at the numbers, the $287 hotel rooms and the $75 steaks and the cash she'd siphoned away one ATM visit at a time, that was concrete. That was evidence of planning, of intention, of choices made over and over again to betray me and our daughter. That was who she really was. Thursday. I waited until Tori was in the shower. I could hear her singing, happy and oblivious, and retrieved the burner phone from its hiding spot. The text history was extensive. D. Can't stop thinking about last weekend. You're incredible. V. I feel like myself when I'm with you. The real me. D. Vera. My Vera. 2 more years, tops. Once you're free, we start our real life. V. Cabo in May? I told T it's a girl's trip. He never questions anything. D. That's because he's boring. You deserve so much more. V. I know. I'm finally starting to believe it. I photographed every message and sent them to a secure email account I'd created specifically for this purpose. Then I returned the phone to exactly where it had been, oriented precisely the same way. Friday evening, Ethan delivered his full report. I've got good news and better news, he said. Which do you want first? Start with the good. The cabin in the Polaroids is a rental property in Cedar Falls, about 3 hours north. It's owned by a shell company, but the booking records show Derek Lawson's personal card paying for 6 separate weekend stays over the past year. Your wife's description in the journal matches the property exactly. And the better news? Ethan paused. He actually looked uncomfortable, which I hadn't thought was possible. Mr. Bennett, I need you to understand something. In my line of work, I talk to a lot of people, ex-boyfriends, former colleagues, old roommates. Usually it's a dead end. People don't want to get involved. But sometimes, Ethan, just tell me. I tracked down two of your wife's ex-boyfriends, Jason Whitfield, who she dated for 3 years in college, and Brandon Cole, who she was with for about 18 months after graduation. And Jason told me that during their 3-year relationship, your wife cheated on him with at least 3 different men that he knows of. Probably more. He said she had a pattern. She'd create these alternate personas, give herself different names when she was with them. He caught her once and she convinced him he was crazy, that he'd misunderstood. 6 months later, he found definitive proof and ended it. He said, and I'm quoting here, "She destroyed my 20s. I never fully recovered." I felt my jaw tighten. And Brandon? Similar story. 14 months into their relationship, he found emails to 2 different men. She'd been seeing both of them for most of their time together. When he confronted her, she turned it around on him, said he was controlling, paranoid, abusive, nearly ruined his reputation before he got out. Ethan leaned closer to the camera. "Your wife isn't having an affair, Mr. Bennett. She's a serial cheater. This is her pattern. It's who she is." I sat with that information for a long time after the call ended. Part of me, a small, pathetic part, had been holding on to the hope that this was a mistake, a midlife crisis, a one-time lapse that we could maybe, somehow, work through. That part of me died Friday night. Tori was downstairs watching a cooking show and drinking wine, occasionally calling out to ask if I wanted to join her. "There's this amazing recipe for salmon," she said. "We should try it this weekend." "Sure, babe, whatever you want." I was done being a victim. I was done being the fool. She'd built a fake life on top of our real one, and I was going to tear it down brick by brick. But not in private. Not in some quiet divorce filing that let her control the narrative. She wanted to be seen as the sophisticated woman trapped in a boring marriage? Fine. I'd show everyone exactly who she really was. The next 2 weeks were the hardest performance of my life. I kissed Tori good morning and told her I loved her. I sat through dinners where she talked about her stressful projects and nodded sympathetically. I made love to her twice. I couldn't avoid it without raising suspicion, and both times I stared at the ceiling afterward, feeling like I needed to scrub my skin off. But I also planned. Easter was coming up in 3 weeks. I suggested a family reunion picnic. Both families, close friends, everyone we cared about gathered at Riverside Park. Tori was thrilled. She loved these events, loved performing the role of perfect wife and hostess. She spent hours planning the menu, the decorations, the seating arrangements. "This is going to be so beautiful," she said, showing me Pinterest boards full of pastel color schemes. "Everyone's going to see what we've built together." "That's the idea," I said. Meanwhile, I was meeting with attorneys. Nathan referred me to Carolyn West, who had a reputation as the best family lawyer in the county. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and absolutely zero patience for nonsense. I brought everything: copies of the journal, the photographs, the financial records, Ethan's full report. She read through it in silence for 20 minutes, while I sat in her leather chair and tried not to fidget. When she looked up, her expression was somewhere between impressed and horrified. "Mr. Bennett, in 15 years of family law, this is one of the cleanest cases I've ever seen. Your wife documented her own destruction. She wrote down dates, amounts, plans. It's like she wanted to get caught. Can we win custody?" "Primary custody, almost certainly. Full custody is harder. Courts generally want both parents involved unless there's abuse or danger. But given the financial fraud, the pattern of deception, and the fact that she was actively planning to abandon her child, yes, I think we have an excellent case." We prepared divorce papers that day. They sat in her office, ready to file the moment I gave the word. "Whatever you're planning for this public reveal," Carolyn said as I was leaving, "make sure your daughter isn't there. Children remember these moments forever. Protect her from the show." Already handled. Grace would spend Easter morning at her best friend's house. She was supposed to join the picnic later, but later would never come. By the time the dust settled, I'd have her safe at my parents' place, far from the carnage. I moved our important documents to Nathan's house: birth certificates, passports, the deed to the house. I opened a separate bank account at a different institution and quietly redirected my direct deposit. I took photos of everything valuable in the house, documenting our assets in case Tori tried to claim I'd hidden things. The night before Easter, I watched Tori try on 3 different outfits for the picnic. She settled on a floral sundress that showed off her figure, the same dress she'd worn in one of the Polaroids with Derek, I noted. "How do I look?" she asked, spinning. "Perfect." She kissed me, a real kiss, deep and lingering. "I love you so much. Tomorrow's going to be such a great day. Our families, our friends, our beautiful life." I looked at her and saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight," I said. "Still fighting off that bug? Don't want you getting sick before the big day." "You're so thoughtful," she touched my cheek. "I'm so lucky to have you." I didn't sleep at all. Easter Sunday broke clear and warm, one of those perfect spring days that felt like a gift. Riverside Park was green and blooming, the pavilion decorated with flowers that Tori's mother had arranged at dawn. By noon, over 30 people had gathered. Both sets of parents, siblings, aunts and uncles, old friends from college, neighbors, colleagues. Tori moved through the crowd like a queen holding court, hugging, laughing, accepting compliments on the beautiful setup. "You two are such an inspiration," I heard someone say. "Relationship goals," another voice added. Her father, William Palmer, clapped me on the shoulder. He was a self-made man, built a consulting empire from nothing, and he'd never quite thought I was good enough for his princess. But today, he was magnanimous. "Hell of a family you've built here, son. Hell of a family." "Thank you, sir." I'd placed the journal in a gift bag labeled Family Memories, nestled among real photo albums and scrapbooks. It sat on the gift table, waiting. The moment came around 2 o'clock. Tori's sister, Angela, was helping organize the table. She was 3 years younger than Tori, always in her shadow, always trying to please. She'd been the maid of honor at our wedding, had cried during her toast about how she'd never seen 2 people more in love. She'd been instructed to grab the family photo album from the gift bag to set up a slideshow. I watched from across the pavilion, a plate of potato salad in my hands that I hadn't touched. My heart should have been pounding, but it wasn't. I felt nothing but cold clarity. Mission mode. Angela reached into the bag, saw her frown as her fingers found leather instead of laminated pages. Saw her open the journal, curious. She probably thought it was some kind of guest book at first. Saw the color drain from her face as she read the first page. "Tori." Angela's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a knife. "What is this?" Conversations stuttered and died around us. Tori looked up from her conversation with an old college friend, annoyance flickering across her features. She hated being interrupted when she was holding court. Then she saw what Angela was holding, and her expression froze. For just a second, I saw the mask slip. I saw the real Victoria underneath, calculating, panicked, already running through her options. Deny? Explain? Attack? "Give me that." She moved fast, practically lunging across the table, but Angela stepped back. "Derek says I'm finally becoming my authentic self," Angela read aloud, her voice shaking. "He sees the real me, not the suburban mother, not the dutiful wife." "Tori, what the hell is this? Who's Derek?" The crowd had gone silent. 30 people stood motionless, wine glasses suspended halfway to lips, burgers cooling on paper plates. I could see the precise moment when understanding rippled through the gathering. The exchanged glances, the whispered, "Oh my God," the way everyone's eyes swiveled between Victoria and me. That's private, Tori hissed, snatching for the journal again. That's my private journal, Tyler. Why do you… She stopped, looked at me, and I saw the moment she understood. You found it, she whispered. In your closet. Behind the coats you said you donated to Goodwill. I kept my voice calm, steady. I'd rehearsed this 100 times in front of my bathroom mirror, practiced keeping my tone flat and even. Along with the burner phone and the photographs, the ones from your anniversary trip. You know, the conference in Phoenix that wasn't actually a conference. Tyler, let me explain. Explain what? The $41,000 you stole from our family? The 18 months of hotel rooms and jewelry and weekend getaways with your creative director? The texts where you called me boring and said you were planning to leave once Grace was old enough? A gasp from somewhere in the crowd. Tori's mother's hand flew to her mouth. I pulled out my phone and walked over to William Palmer. His face had gone the color of old paper. He'd built his reputation on integrity, on trust, on doing business with a handshake. His daughter had just been accused of theft and adultery in front of everyone he respected. I showed him a photograph. His daughter in Derek's arms, her head thrown back in laughter, his lips on her neck. She told me she was at a work conference for our anniversary, I said. She was at a cabin with her lover, November 15th. She wrote the date on the back herself. William stared at the photo. His jaw worked silently, like he was trying to form words that wouldn't come. Then he looked at his daughter, his princess, his firstborn, the girl whose picture sat on his desk at work, and I watched something shatter behind his eyes. Victoria, his voice cracked. Tell me this isn't true. For a moment, I thought she might try to brazen it out. She was good at that. I'd seen the pattern now, the way she'd gaslit her exes, twisted reality until they doubted their own sanity. But she was surrounded. Her mother was already crying. Her sister was reading more passages from the journal in a horrified whisper. Her friends were backing away like she was contagious. She broke. Daddy, please, you don't understand. Tyler was never there. He was always working. I was so lonely. So lonely you had to steal from your family? Nathan stepped forward. I'd asked him to come, just in case. There's almost $23,000 in secret credit card debt. Thousands more siphoned from their joint accounts. That's not loneliness, Victoria. That's fraud. You don't know what it was like. She was screaming now, mascara running, all pretense of composure gone. Being trapped in this life, this boring, predictable life with a man who cares more about his projects than about me. I worked 60-hour weeks to provide for you, I said quietly. I missed my best friend's wedding because you said Grace had the flu. I turned down a promotion that would have required travel because you said you needed me home. And the whole time you were… Tyler. Her voice dropped, became pleading. Tyler, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake. She's… Vera. She's not really me. It was like a fantasy, a game. You were planning to leave. You wrote it down. 2 more years. Once Grace is older. You were going to take my daughter and walk away. Tori's mother, Diane, had collapsed onto a picnic bench. Her father stood frozen, looking at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. Angela closed the journal. There's more in here, she said. A lot more. Names, dates, places. She looked at her sister with something like disgust. How could you? You don't understand, Angie. I've never lied to everyone who loved me. You're right. I haven't. I took a breath. I filed for divorce this morning. The papers have already been submitted to the court. You'll be served officially tomorrow, but I wanted you to know. I looked around at the assembled crowd, the shocked faces, the whispered horror, the friends already edging toward the parking lot. I wanted everyone to know. Tori lunged at me, not to hit me, to grab me, to hold on to me, as if physical contact could undo what had just happened. Tyler, please, please. Think about Grace. Think about our family. I removed her hands from my arms. I am thinking about Grace. That's why she's not here. That's why she's safe at my parents' house right now, where she doesn't have to watch her mother's lies collapse around her. I picked up my keys and my jacket. Tyler. Her voice was barely a whisper now. Please don't leave me. I turned back one last time. You left me 18 months ago. I'm just making it official. The drive to pick up Grace was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I pulled over twice because I couldn't see through the blur in my eyes. I'd held it together through the entire confrontation, stayed calm and controlled and precise. But now, alone in my car, the dam broke. I screamed until my throat was raw. I pounded the steering wheel until my hands ached. I let out 16 years of love and trust and hope and watched it all drain away into nothing. Then I wiped my face, checked my reflection, and drove the rest of the way to my parents' house. Grace ran to me when I walked in the door. Daddy, Grammy made cookies. When are we going to the picnic? I knelt down and held my daughter. She smelled like sugar and childhood and everything good in the world. Baby, I need to talk to you about something. We sat on my mother's couch, my mom on one side, my dad standing quietly by the fireplace. I'd asked them to be there. I didn't know if I could do this alone. Gracie, you know how mommy and daddy love you very much? Uh-huh. Well, sometimes grown-ups have problems. Big problems that kids shouldn't have to worry about. And mommy and daddy have been having some problems. Her face clouded. She was 8 years old and she already understood more than I wanted her to. Is that why you've been sad? Out of the mouths of babes. I'd thought I was hiding it. Kids see everything. Yeah, sweetheart. That's why I've been sad. And because of those problems, mommy and daddy aren't going to live together anymore. Like Emma's parents? Kind of like that, yeah. Will I still see mommy? Of course you will. Of course. She loves you very much and you're going to see her lots. It's just going to be different for a while. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she climbed into my lap and wrapped her arms around my neck. I don't want you to be sad, Daddy. I held her tight and let myself cry for the second time that day. My mother was crying too. I could hear her sniffling. My father just put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed. I'll be okay, baby girl. We'll be okay. I promise. The dominoes began falling the next week. I submitted an anonymous HR complaint to Victoria's company, documenting the workplace affair with specific dates when company resources had been used for personal trips. I attached Derek's corporate calendar, thanks to Ethan's particular talents, showing how his client meetings aligned perfectly with Victoria's conferences. I noted the hotel charges on his corporate card that had been written off as business expenses. Derek Lawson was called into a meeting with Human Resources by Wednesday. I know because Ethan was still monitoring the situation. Call it due diligence. Call it wanting to watch him squirm. He walked in cocky, Ethan reported. Walked out looking like someone had hit him with a 2x4. They put him on administrative leave pending investigation. But that was just the opening salvo. I prepared an envelope for his wife. I'd thought about this part for a long time. Megan Lawson was, by all accounts, a decent woman. She'd married Derek right out of college, supported him through his early career struggles when he was working at a print shop and dreaming of creative direction. She'd raised 2 kids mostly alone while he climbed the corporate ladder and apparently cheated on her repeatedly. She deserved to know who she was really married to. I didn't send the most explicit materials. That would have felt cruel. Just enough. A few photographs from the cabin weekends. A few text messages where Derek called Victoria his real life and Megan his obligation. A printout of his corporate calendar matched against hotel receipts. And a note. I'm sorry you have to find out this way. My wife was the other woman. You deserve better. She received the envelope on Friday. By Sunday, she'd posted everything on social media. The post was epic. I hadn't anticipated that, though, in retrospect, I should have. Megan Lawson had spent 15 years building a life with a man who'd been lying to her face, and she was done being quiet about it. She posted screenshots of Derek's text calling her boring and exhausting. She posted photos of him at restaurants with Victoria, their body language unmistakable. She posted a detailed timeline, their 10th anniversary trip to Hawaii, the one where he'd renewed their vows on the beach with tears in his eyes, had happened 2 weeks after a cabin weekend with his mistress. "I thought I was building a life with my best friend," Megan wrote. "Turns out I was building it alone while he vacationed in someone else's bed. To everyone who's going to tell me I should have handled this privately. I was private for 15 years. I was the good wife, the understanding wife, the wife who didn't ask questions. Look where that got me." The post went viral in their circle. Derek's friends, colleagues, and family members all weighed in. Some supportive of Megan, some shocked, some claiming they'd always known something was off. His mother commented asking him to call her. His brother-in-law threatened to break his legs. His college roommate just wrote, "Dude, what the hell?" Within hours, Derek was getting texts from everyone he knew. His professional reputation, his personal relationships, his carefully cultivated image of the successful family man. All of it crumbled in the time it takes to refresh a web page. By Monday morning, Derek Lawson's career was over. His company had a strict ethics policy. Workplace relationships required disclosure and were generally discouraged between supervisors and subordinates. Derek hadn't disclosed anything. He'd also apparently used his corporate card for a few of those client dinners that were actually dates with my wife. He was terminated for cause. No severance, no references. HR sent a company-wide email about maintaining professional standards that everyone knew was about him. Victoria was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Her involvement with Derek made her culpable in the ethics violations, and her attendance records were suddenly under scrutiny. All those conferences she'd attended were being examined. She was gone within the month. Mutual separation to avoid litigation, her termination letter apparently said, which meant they'd found enough to fire her outright, but were giving her a chance to leave quietly. She didn't leave quietly. She called me screaming about how I'd destroyed her career. I recorded the call, one-party consent state, perfectly legal, and saved it for my attorney. Meanwhile, the financial reckoning had begun. Per Carolyn's advice, I froze our joint accounts. Victoria's secret credit card debt became her sole responsibility. She'd opened it without my knowledge, run it up without my consent, and hidden it from me for over a year. That was textbook financial infidelity. She couldn't afford her attorney's retainer. I'd expected William Palmer to step in. He was wealthy. He'd always spoiled his daughter, and despite everything, she was still his child. But I'd underestimated how seriously William took his reputation. He'd built his business on trust and integrity. His daughter had just been publicly exposed as a liar and a thief. Angela called me a week after the picnic. "My dad won't help her," she said. "He said he can't be associated with what she did. He's not speaking to her." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and mostly meant it. Victoria had earned her consequences, but watching a family implode was ugly no matter whose fault it was. "Tyler, I want you to know that I'm sorry. I had no idea. I thought you two were happy. She always seems so... She's a good actress." "Yeah, she is." Angela paused. "If there's anything I can do for Grace, I want to help. I know you probably don't trust any of us right now, but Grace is my niece. I love her. I appreciate that. I'll let you know." Victoria showed up at the house a week later, the house I was already refinancing into my name alone. She was wearing the dress from our first date, the blue one that brought out her eyes. She'd clearly spent hours on her makeup. "Tyler, can we please talk?" I stepped onto the porch but didn't invite her in. What do you want to talk about? I miss you. I miss our family. I made a terrible mistake and I'm so sorry. She reached for my hand. I didn't move it away. I wanted to see where this went. We could go to counseling. We could start over. I'd do anything, Tyler. Anything. You were planning to leave me. You wrote it down. That wasn't real. That was Vera. It was like a character I played. The real me loves you. I've always loved you. The real you stole $41,000 from our family. The real you slept with your coworker for 18 months while I was raising our daughter. The real you was going to take Grace and walk away the minute she was old enough. No, Tyler, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You thought you could have both lives, the security of our marriage and the excitement of your affair. You thought you were too smart to get caught. Her expression shifted. The pleading softness hardened into something uglier. Fine. You want to play it that way? I'll tell everyone you were abusive. I'll tell them you controlled every aspect of my life, that I was a prisoner in this house. That's not going to work, Tori. It's worked before, she spat. I know. Brandon Cole told me all about it. So did Jason Whitfield. The color drained from her face. You talked to my exes? My investigator did. They're both willing to testify about your pattern of behavior. Cheating, lying, gaslighting, accusing them of abuse when they caught you. It's all documented now. She stared at me. For the first time since I'd known her, she was completely speechless. Your lies don't work on me anymore, I said. Save them for the court. I went back inside and closed the door. The custody hearing was 6 weeks later. The courthouse was a gray, brutalist building downtown that seemed designed to crush hope. I'd been there once before, for jury duty, and had sworn I'd never come back. Life has a way of laughing at those kinds of promises. Victoria showed up late, looking like she'd slept in her car. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail that would have been charming 10 years ago, but now just looked desperate. Her outfit was wrinkled, a blazer that didn't quite match her skirt, like she'd grabbed whatever was clean. Her court-appointed attorney, the one she'd gotten after she couldn't pay her original lawyer, a chain-smoking bulldog named Hartley, who dropped her case when the check stopped clearing, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I'd worn my best suit. Navy blue, freshly pressed, the one I wore to job interviews and funerals. My attorney, Carolyn West, wore a better one, charcoal gray, impeccably tailored, with a silk scarf that probably cost more than Victoria's entire outfit. She carried a leather briefcase thick with documents and an expression that said she'd already won. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. No jury box. This was family court, not criminal. Just the judge's bench, 2 tables for the opposing parties, and a gallery that held Nathan, my parents, and Angela, who'd texted me that morning. I'm there for Grace, not for her. Judge Patricia Hawkins was a silver-haired woman with half-moon glasses and eyes that looked like they'd heard every lie imaginable. She read through the preliminary filings while we waited, occasionally making small notes on a yellow legal pad. We're here today for a temporary custody determination, she said finally. Mr. Bennett is petitioning for primary custody of the minor child, Grace Bennett, age 8. Mrs. Bennett has filed a counterpetition requesting shared custody remain in place. I've reviewed the initial submissions from both parties. Counselor West, you may proceed. Carolyn laid out our case methodically. The affair, documented by Victoria's own journal and photographs. The financial fraud, $41,347 diverted from the family over 18 months. The burner phone, the pattern of deception. The fact that Victoria had explicitly written about her plans to abandon the family once Grace was old enough. Your Honor, this is not a case of a marriage that simply fell apart, Carolyn concluded. This is a case of calculated betrayal spanning nearly 2 years. Mrs. Bennett didn't make a mistake. She made a plan, And that plan involved taking her daughter from her father and using her as leverage for a more favorable settlement. Victoria's attorney, a tired-looking man named Compton, who'd clearly taken this case as a favor to someone, tried to argue that the public humiliation constituted entrapment and that the evidence should be thrown out. Judge Hawkins' expression didn't change. Counsel, discovering your spouse's affair is not entrapment. If your client didn't want her journal read, she shouldn't have written detailed confessions and hidden them in a shared closet. Motion denied. Do you have any substantive response to the allegations? Compton shuffled his papers. Victoria leaned over to whisper something to him, her face flushed with anger or shame or both. Your Honor, my client admits that she made poor decisions. But she loves her daughter and has been a devoted mother for 8 years. One mistake shouldn't erase all of that. One mistake, Carolyn cut in. Your Honor, we have testimony from 2 of Mrs. Bennett's former romantic partners documenting a pattern of infidelity going back 15 years. This isn't a mistake. This is who she is. The judge's eyebrows rose. You have corroborating witnesses? We do. Video deposition from Jason Whitfield, who dated Mrs. Bennett for 3 years in college, and a written statement from Brandon Cole, who was in a relationship with her for 18 months afterward. Both describe identical patterns: multiple affairs, alternate personas, gaslighting when confronted, accusations of abuse when they tried to leave. Victoria made a strangled sound. I didn't look at her. Judge Hawkins was quiet for a moment. I'll allow the testimony as character evidence, given that custody is being contested and parental fitness is at issue. We'll reconvene in 1 week for the full hearing. As we filed out of the courtroom, Victoria grabbed my arm. Her grip was stronger than I'd expected, desperate strength. Tyler, please don't do this. Don't take my daughter away from me. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. She was crying, mascara streaking down her cheeks, the perfect facade completely shattered. You took yourself away, I said. I'm just filing the paperwork. The forensic accountant was particularly damaging. He walked through 18 months of financial infidelity in precise detail. Every secret charge, every cash withdrawal, every deposit into Victoria's Freedom Fund. The total, with interest, $41,347. Your Honor, Carolyn said, my client is requesting that the respondent be held solely responsible for the debts she incurred without his knowledge or consent, and that she be required to repay the funds she siphoned from their joint accounts. The judge agreed. Victoria would be responsible for every penny, and since she didn't have any income anymore, the repayment would come from her share of any assets. Her grandmother had left her a small inheritance 2 years ago. It would all go to paying off her debts. The pattern testimony was the final nail. Jason Whitfield appeared on a large screen at the front of the courtroom, video linking from his office in Chicago. He was a handsome guy, the kind of confident professional that Victoria had always gravitated toward, but there was something haunted behind his eyes. I dated Victoria for 3 years in college, he said. We were engaged for the last 6 months of that. I thought I was going to marry her. And what happened? Carolyn asked. I found out she was cheating on me, with at least 3 different men that I could confirm. Probably more. Victoria's attorney objected. The judge overruled. She had this way of making you feel crazy, Jason continued. I confronted her once, found some texts that didn't add up, and she turned it around on me completely. Said I was paranoid, controlling, jealous. Said if I really loved her, I'd trust her. I backed down. I apologized. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. 6 months later, I found definitive proof. Photographs. Couldn't deny it anymore. How did she respond when you ended the relationship? She told everyone I was abusive, that I'd been controlling and manipulative throughout our relationship. She said the other guys were escape plans because she was afraid of me. Jason's jaw tightened. I lost friends over that. People who'd known me for years looked at me differently. She nearly destroyed my reputation. And how has this affected you long term? Jason was quiet for a moment. I'm 43 years old, he said finally. I've never had a relationship last more than 18 months since her. I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Always looking for the lie. She destroyed my ability to trust. Victoria was crying quietly at her table. I didn't feel sorry for her. Brandon Cole's written statement was read into the record. Similar story, different details. 14 months together, 2 secret affairs on her side, accusations of abuse when he tried to leave. He'd moved across the country to escape her. Victoria's own diary became Exhibit A. Her words, in her handwriting, damning her more thoroughly than any witness ever could. Tyler doesn't see me anymore. He sees the mother of his child, the keeper of his house. I'm dying inside, and he doesn't even notice. Derek understands. Derek sees Vera, the real me, not this cardboard cutout of a suburban wife. 2 more years, maybe less. Once Grace is in middle school and less dependent, I can finally start my real life. Tyler can keep the house. I just want my freedom. The financial forensics came next. A pale accountant in wire-rimmed glasses walked through 18 months of secret spending, his monotone voice somehow making the betrayal even more stark. The total unauthorized expenditure from joint accounts and secretly held credit was $41,347, he concluded. This includes direct transfers to Mrs. Bennett's personal account, cash withdrawals, credit card charges for hotels and restaurants inconsistent with her stated locations, and 3 jewelry purchases totaling $2,600. Thank you, Carolyn said. No further questions. Victoria's attorney had nothing. He shuffled his papers, glanced at his client, and shook his head. The final judgment came down in week 18. Judge Hawkins read from prepared notes, her voice dry and businesslike. I got primary custody of Grace. She would live with me full-time, attending her same school, keeping her same friends, maintaining as much normalcy as possible. I got the house. I'd refinance to remove Victoria's name. She'd get nothing from the equity. I got my retirement accounts, untouched. I got a piece of paper that officially ended 16 years of marriage to a woman I'd never really known. Victoria got supervised visitation every other weekend, 2 days a month with her daughter, monitored by a court-appointed observer. She got her car, still with 18 payments left. She got her personal belongings. And she got her debt. All of it, including the $2,500 she owed me for the money she'd stolen. Her attorney had quit before the final hearing because she couldn't pay her bill. She represented herself at the end, badly, rambling about how I'd conspired against her, how the evidence was taken out of context, how she was a good mother regardless of my mistakes as a wife. The judge listened patiently, then ruled against her on every point. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, not even relief. Just empty. 16 years of my life ended in a conference room by a judge's signature. All the memories, the wedding, the honeymoon, Grace's birth, the Christmases and anniversaries and ordinary Tuesdays, now reframed as lies. A story I'd believed completely, written by someone who'd never existed. Grace was waiting at my parents' house when I got back. Is it over? She asked. Yeah, baby, it's over. Am I going to live with you now? You're going to live with me most of the time, and you'll still see Mom sometimes, okay? She loves you very much. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then, Daddy, why did Mommy lie? I didn't have an answer. There was no answer a child could understand. There was no answer I could understand, really. Some people just take. They take and take and take until there's nothing left. and then they move on to the next person. I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make really bad choices. But you didn't do anything wrong, okay? None of this is your fault. I know, she said, and hugged me tight. Grammy told me that. She said you and Mommy both love me even if you don't love each other anymore. My mother, I thought, always knowing exactly what to say. The months after the divorce were about rebuilding. The first few weeks were the hardest. Grace had nightmares almost every night. Not about anything specific, just vague terrors that sent her running to my room at 3 a.m. I'd hold her until she fell back asleep, then lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Had I? Some nights I wasn't sure. I'd destroyed Victoria in public, aired our dirty laundry for everyone to see. I could have handled it quietly, filed for divorce, settled out of court, let everyone think we'd just grown apart. That's what civilized people did. But I wasn't feeling civilized. I was feeling betrayed, gutted, replaced. She'd looked me in the eye every day for 18 months and lied. She'd kissed me goodbye on her way to meet her lover. She'd made love to me and then written in her journal about how boring I was. She deserved to be exposed. Didn't she? Grace and I found our rhythm eventually. Breakfast together every morning. Scrambled eggs and toast, her favorite, though I burned them more often than I cared to admit. Homework help every evening, even when the third-grade math made no sense to me. Common Core, I'd mutter, Googling frantically while Grace waited patiently. Weekend trips to the park, to the movies, to the ice cream shop that had been our special place since she was 3. I got promoted to engineering director, partly because I was good at my job and partly because my boss had heard about what happened and admired how I'd handled it. We were having drinks after a late night, the project finally submitted, and he brought it up out of nowhere. My wife told me about the thing at the park, he said. The Easter thing. Word gets around. I stiffened. I can explain. You don't need to explain anything. He took a sip of his bourbon. What you did took guts. You could have burned everything down, gotten violent, made threats, dragged it out for years. You didn't. You were surgical. Gathered evidence, made your case. Let the facts speak for themselves. He shook his head. That's the kind of thinking we need in leadership. Emotion is the enemy of good decisions. You didn't let emotion win. I didn't tell him about the nights I'd wanted to drive to Derek's house with a baseball bat. The fantasies of finding him alone somewhere, showing him what 16 years of blue-collar work ethic looked like applied to a man's face. The moments when surgical had just barely won out over scorched earth. I didn't tell him that I'd chosen strategy over violence mostly because of Grace, because I couldn't be her father from prison, because she needed me whole, not broken by my own rage. Thanks, I said instead. I appreciate that. The director position opens up next quarter. Your name's at the top of the list. Victoria's calls came occasionally. Sometimes angry, blaming me for everything, for the public humiliation, for her losing her job, for her father refusing to speak to her, for Derek abandoning her the moment things got hard. You ruined my life, she'd scream into my voicemail. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? Sometimes tearful, begging for another chance. I made a mistake, Tyler, a terrible mistake, but I still love you. I still love our family. Can't we try again? For Grace? Once, drunk and rambling, she called at 2 a.m. and talked for 20 minutes while I lay in bed listening, not saying a word. She talked about how she'd had everything and thrown it away. She talked about Derek, who'd moved to the West Coast and wouldn't return her calls. She talked about her apartment, a cramped studio in a neighborhood where she had to check the locks twice before sleeping. I used to dream about freedom, she slurred. About escaping the prison of my boring life. Now I'd give anything to go back. Anything. I recorded every call and let them go to voicemail. My attorney said to document everything. You never knew what might be useful later. Then, about 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from Angela. Tori's in the hospital, she said. Some kind of cardiac event. The doctors are saying it was stress-induced. She collapsed at her apartment. She's living in this terrible place on the south side now, Tyler. You wouldn't believe how bad. And her neighbor called 911. I sat with that information for a moment. Part of me felt nothing. Another part, a smaller part, the part that still remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with, felt something like grief. Is she going to be okay? They think so, but she's asking for grace. She wants to see her. I could have said no. I had every right to say no. But Grace was Victoria's daughter too, and despite everything, a child should know her mother. I'll bring her tomorrow, I said, for a short visit. The hospital room was stark and white. Victoria lay in the bed, looking 10 years older than when I'd last seen her. She'd lost weight, too much weight, and her skin had a grayish pallor. Grace held my hand as we walked in. "Hi, Mommy," she said. "Grammy said you weren't feeling good." Victoria started crying. "Hi, baby. Hi. Thank you for coming. Thank you for—" She looked at me. "Tyler. Thank you." I nodded, but didn't say anything. "Mommy, are you going to be okay?" "I'm going to be fine, sweetheart. The doctors are taking really good care of me." "Okay, good." Grace was quiet for a moment. Then, with the devastating honesty of children, "Mommy, why did you lie?" Victoria's face crumpled. She reached for Grace's hand, and Grace let her take it, but I could feel my daughter's hesitation. I made bad choices, baby. Really bad choices. I hurt Daddy, and I hurt you, and I hurt a lot of people, and I'm so sorry." "Are you going to lie again?" "I'm trying really hard not to." Grace considered this. "Okay," she said finally. "I hope you feel better." We stayed for 15 minutes. Victoria cried through most of it, trying to talk through the tears, apologizing over and over. Grace was polite but distant. She'd been in therapy for months, working through her feelings about the divorce, and her therapist had prepared her for this. At the door, Victoria called out to me, "Tyler, wait." I paused. "I was going to leave you," she said quietly so Grace couldn't hear. "Right after Grace started middle school, I was going to take everything I could and start over with Derek. I had a plan." "I know. You wrote it all down." "I was so stupid." She was crying again, but quietly now. "I had everything. Everything I ever wanted. And I threw it away for someone who left me the minute things got hard. I didn't feel any satisfaction. I thought I would. I'd imagined this moment, Victoria broken and admitting her mistakes. But standing there in that hospital room, I just felt tired." "Yeah," I said. "You did." I took Grace's hand and walked away. A year later, Grace and I were planting a garden in the backyard. It was her idea. She'd learned about photosynthesis in science class and wanted to grow something from scratch. We'd gone to the nursery together and picked out tomato plants, cucumber seeds, a flat of strawberries, and some flowers she liked because they were purple. "Can we plant more tomatoes?" she asked, her hands covered in dirt. Mom always said she wanted a garden but never did it. I handed her another seedling. "We can plant whatever we want. This is our home now." Rachel walked out onto the patio with lemonade. She'd been my colleague for years, one of the few people at work I considered a genuine friend. After the divorce, our friendship had deepened slowly, naturally. She'd never pushed, never asked for more than I was ready to give. She just was there. By the time I was ready for more, she was too. "How's it going out here?" she asked. "We're making progress," Grace said importantly. "Daddy says we'll have tomatoes by August." "Maybe August," I corrected. "If we're lucky." Rachel sat down on the patio steps and watched us work. Grace had taken to her easily. She was good with kids, patient and warm without trying too hard. Nothing was forced. I like Rachel, Grace had told me a few weeks ago. She doesn't try to be my mom. She just tries to be my friend. I thought about that now, watching my daughter carefully pat soil around her tomato plant and my girlfriend sip lemonade in the afternoon sun. A year ago, I'd been sitting in a dark living room holding the shattered pieces of my life. Now I was building something new. Victoria had partial custody again, unsupervised now, twice a month. She'd gotten a job as an office administrator at a small company downtown. Nothing glamorous, but steady. She'd started therapy, according to Angela. She was trying. I didn't forgive her. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I'd stopped thinking about her every day. I'd stopped rehearsing confrontations in my head, stopped cataloging her crimes, stopped feeling that cold, surgical rage that had driven me for months. I'd moved on. That was the best revenge, really. Not the public humiliation, not the courtroom victory, not watching her life collapse around her. Just living well, building something real with people who deserved my trust. "Daddy," Grace said, "can we get a dog?" "We'll see." "That means yes," Rachel stage whispered. "That means we'll see." Grace grinned, her face smudged with dirt and happiness. She looked so much like her mother, but she was also entirely herself, resilient, kind, stronger than any kid should have to be. She'd asked me once in one of our early therapy sessions together if I was happy again. I told her I was getting there. Now, kneeling in the dirt with my daughter, watching my girlfriend laugh at something Grace said, I realized I'd arrived. My wife tried to bury me. She didn't know I was a seed. 6 months later. The tomatoes came in August, just like I'd promised. We ate them in salads, on sandwiches, straight off the vine while standing in the backyard laughing at how good they tasted. Grace brought some to Victoria on one of her visits. "Daddy and I grew these," she said proudly. Rachel helped. Victoria had the grace to smile and say they were delicious. I proposed to Rachel in September, in that same backyard, while Grace watched from the patio with a video camera she'd insisted on setting up. Rachel said yes before I finished the question. "Finally," Grace said, lowering the camera. "I've been waiting forever." We got married the following spring. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Nathan was my best man. Angela came, representing Victoria's side of the family, the side that had chosen to stay in Grace's life. Victoria didn't attend. She sent a card, though. "I'm happy for you," it said. "You deserve good things." I didn't write back. Some bridges stay burned, but some seeds, against all odds, find their way to the sun.